The Millionaire CEO comforts a crying toddler on a flight, then the child calls him Daddy. 1 year ago, a little girl looked up at a man who wasn't her father and said the words that would change 3 lives forever. "Daddy, can you help me color this dragon?" The man's hands froze. His eyes filled with tears. Because 12 months earlier, he'd buried his own 4-year-old daughter. And now this child, this beautiful broken little girl whose real father had abandoned her, was choosing him, choosing to trust him, choosing to call him Daddy. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because none of this would have happened if a plane hadn't hit turbulence at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe exactly the right one. Have you ever been so shattered by loss that you thought you'd never feel whole again? Have you ever watched a stranger show more love to your child in 5 minutes than their own parent showed in a lifetime? This is a story about 2 people who had every reason to never trust anyone again. A single mother abandoned by the man who promised forever. A millionaire who'd lost everything that actually mattered, and the moment at 35,000 feet when their broken pieces started to fit together. What happened next didn't just change a flight, it changed everything. Stick with me, because by the end of this story you'll understand that sometimes our darkest moments are actually doorways to the most unexpected blessings. The turbulence hit flight 447 without warning. Traci Gordon was in seat 23B. Her 3-year-old daughter Mia pressed against her side when the plane dropped suddenly, violently, like the sky had forgotten how to hold them. The overhead bins rattled. Someone's coffee became a projectile, and Mia, sweet brave Mia who'd been so good through the entire boarding process, started to scream. Not cry. Scream. The kind of primal terror that makes every parent within 100 feet want to simultaneously help and thank God it's not their child. Her little body went rigid with fear, her face turning red as she sobbed so hard she couldn't catch her breath. "Mama, we're falling. We're falling." Mia's words came out in choking gasps between screams. Traci pulled her daughter closer, heart pounding. "Shh, baby. It's okay. We're safe. The plane is just dancing with the wind. We're not falling." But Mia was beyond reason, beyond comfort. The turbulence had unlocked something primal in her, and now she was sobbing with the kind of abandon that only a terrified toddler could achieve. Her screams pierced through the cabin like sirens. Traci felt every eye turn toward them. She felt the weight of judgment pressing down from all sides. The businessman in 23 had glanced up from his laptop with barely concealed irritation. The woman across the aisle sighed loudly, making sure everyone heard her displeasure. A teenager 2 rows back pulled his headphones tighter over his ears. "I'm sorry," Traci mouthed to the businessman. "I'm so sorry." He didn't acknowledge her, just returned his attention to his spreadsheet like she and her screaming child were merely background noise to be ignored. Of course he did. That's what people did. They turned away. They disappeared. They decided you weren't worth the inconvenience, just like Mia's father had done 4 months ago. The thought hit Traci like a physical blow, and she had to blink back tears. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not now. She'd cried enough in the past 4 months to last a lifetime. She was supposed to be strong now, rebuilt, moving forward. Except Mia was thrashing in her arms, inconsolable, and Traci had no idea how to fix this. The turbulence bounced them again, and Mia's screams reached a pitch that made Traci's teeth ache. "Please, baby, please. Mama's got you. You're safe." But the words felt hollow, because how could she promise safety when her daughter's entire world had already proven itself unstable? When the man who was supposed to love Mia forever had simply signed papers and walked away like she'd never existed. "Hey there." The voice came from her right, from seat 23C, calm, low, completely unexpected. Traci turned to find herself looking at a man she'd barely noticed during boarding. Mid-30s maybe. Dark hair. Expensive suit that screamed either business travel or uncomfortable amounts of money. But his eyes were kind. That was the first thing she registered. Kind in a way that didn't match the corporate armor. "Is it okay if I try something?" he asked, his voice barely audible above Mia's crying. Traci hesitated, every maternal instinct screaming caution. But Mia was still screaming, and she was out of options. She nodded. The stranger leaned slightly into their space, not touching, just making himself visible to Mia. "Hey, small person. I know this is scary. The plane is dancing with the wind, and it feels like we might fall, right?" Mia's screaming downshifted to sobbing. She was listening. "But here's a secret." The man pulled something from his briefcase. A small stuffed elephant, gray and worn, clearly well loved. Planes are really, really good at dancing. They practice all the time. And while they dance, we can play a game. Do you like games? He held up the elephant. This is Mr. Trunks. He's been on 472 flights, and he gets scared sometimes too. Can you hold him for me? He needs someone brave. Mia's sobs stuttered. She stared at the elephant, then at the stranger, her face blotchy and wet. Then slowly, carefully, she reached out one small hand. Thank you, the man said seriously, placing the elephant in Mia's palm. Mr. Trunks says you're the bravest person on this whole plane. I'm not brave. Mia's voice was raw from screaming. I'm scared. Being scared and being brave aren't opposites. Brave means you're scared, but you keep going anyway. You got on this big plane even though it's kind of scary. That's brave. Mia clutched the elephant to her chest. The turbulence had gentled to occasional bumps, and the crisis was passing. But she hadn't looked away from the stranger, studying him with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. What's your name? She asked finally. Edwin. What's yours? Mia. She paused, then added with the blunt honesty that only a 3-year-old could deliver. You look like my daddy. Traci's entire body went rigid. Oh God. Mia, sweetheart, don't. But you're nicer, Mia continued, oblivious to her mother's horror. My daddy went away. Do you go away? The question landed in the recycled air of the cabin like a bomb. Traci wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor of the plane and freefall to earth, because it would be less painful than this moment, than watching this stranger's face as her 3-year-old daughter casually revealed the most devastating truth of their lives. I'm so sorry, Traci managed, her voice barely steady. She doesn't understand. She's 3. She doesn't know. It's okay. Edwin's voice carried something that sounded like understanding mixed with pain. Really, it's okay. He looked back at Mia, who was waiting for an answer with the patience of someone who'd learned early that adults often avoided difficult questions. Sometimes I go away for work, Edwin told her honestly, but I always try to come back to the people who matter. Do you want to know a secret? Mia nodded solemnly. Mr. Trunks helps me remember to come back. Every time I travel, he reminds me that home is important. Will you take very good care of him until we land? Then you can give him back, and I'll know you're someone who keeps promises. I keep promises, Mia said firmly. Then with the lightning-quick emotional shifts of toddlerhood, she yawned hugely and snuggled into Traci's side, the elephant tucked under her chin. Within 5 minutes, she was asleep. Traci sat frozen, afraid to move and wake her daughter, afraid to look at the stranger who'd just witnessed the rawest moment of their lives. But Edwin was already returning to his laptop, giving them space, acting like nothing extraordinary had happened, like he hadn't just performed a small miracle. Thank you, Traci whispered finally. I don't know what you did, but thank you. She's been so difficult since. She stopped, unsure how much to share with a stranger. You don't have to explain, Edwin said quietly, still not looking up from his screen. I'm glad I could help. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable so much as full, heavy with things unsaid. Traci studied him peripherally, noting details. No wedding ring. Expensive watch. The stuffed elephant had been in his briefcase, well loved and clearly meaningful. Who was this man who traveled with childhood comfort objects? Can I ask you something? Traci said finally, keeping her voice low so as not to wake Mia. Sure. Why do you travel with a stuffed elephant? Edwin's hands paused on the keyboard. For a long moment, Traci thought he wouldn't answer. Then he closed the laptop and turned to face her fully, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like old grief, worn smooth by time but still present. My daughter gave it to me, he said simply. Before I lost her, the bottom dropped out of Traci's stomach. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked. I didn't mean to. It's okay. It was a long time ago, 7 years this month. He glanced at sleeping Mia. She was 4. Brain cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to the end. Mr. Trunks was her favorite. She gave him to me the last time I had to travel for work, told me he'd keep me safe. After she died, I couldn't leave him behind. So he comes with me everywhere. Traci felt tears spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. I'm so sorry. That's unimaginable. I can't even process that kind of loss. You learn to carry it, Edwin said, not unkindly. The grief becomes part of you, like a scar that doesn't hurt as much over time but never fully disappears. You build your life around it and keep going because that's what you do. That's all you can do. Is that why you helped Mia? Because she reminded you of your daughter? Partly, but also because you looked like you needed someone to see you. Really see you, not just judge you for having a scared child on an airplane. He paused. I've been that parent. The one alone in public with a child who's falling apart, feeling every stranger's annoyance like a physical blow. I wouldn't wish that isolation on anyone. The honesty was staggering. Traci had spent 4 months building walls around herself and Mia, protecting them from a world that had proven itself cruel and unreliable. And here was this stranger, this broken but functional man, offering understanding without expecting anything in return. Her father left 4 months ago, Traci heard herself say. Words she hadn't spoken aloud to anyone except her sister. Just left. Decided fatherhood was too hard and his freedom was more important. Filed for divorce, signed away his parental rights, and disappeared like we'd never existed. Mia asks about him every single day, and I don't know what to tell her except that some people don't know how to stay. That's a hard truth for a 3-year-old. It's a hard truth for a 30-year-old, Traci replied. I thought we were happy. I thought he was committed. Turns out I was the only one who believed in the fairy tale. Edwin was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried genuine curiosity, not pity. Where are you headed? Boston? Cambridge, actually. My sister lives there. I needed to get away from Seattle for a while. Too many memories. Too many places that hurt to look at. I got a job offer at a research institute, and I'm trying to convince myself that running away is the same thing as moving forward. Is it working? Ask me in 6 months. He smiled then. Small, but genuine. Fair enough. The flight attendant came by with the beverage cart. Edwin ordered coffee, black. Traci asked for water and almost requested whiskey, then changed her mind. She was done numbing herself. That was the entire point of accepting the Cambridge job, to feel everything and learn to survive it. What do you do? Edwin asked. For work, I mean. Neurological research. Pediatric brain development, specifically. I study how early childhood trauma affects neural pathways and long-term cognitive function. Something flickered across Edwin's face. That's important work. It is. Though lately it feels more personal than professional. Every study I read about parental abandonment, I'm not seeing data. I'm seeing Mia's face when she asks why Daddy doesn't love her anymore. Does she ask that? Every night, right before bed. Mama, why doesn't Daddy love me anymore? And I tell her that sometimes grown-ups stop loving each other, but they never stop loving their children. Which is a lie because her father clearly stopped loving her, or he wouldn't have walked away so completely. But what else do I say? That her father is a coward who chose his own comfort over her well-being. She's 3. She deserves better than that truth. Traci stopped, horrified at herself. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm unloading all of this on you. You're a complete stranger. Sometimes strangers are safest, Edwin observed. No history, no judgment. Just a moment in time where you can be honest without consequences. Is that why you told me about your daughter? Maybe. Or maybe because you're the first person in 7 years who asked about Mr. Trunks without treating it like a quirk or an eccentricity to be politely ignored. You asked like you understood that objects can carry love even after the person who gave them is gone. If you've ever been the person crying alone in public while strangers judge instead of help, hit that like button right now. Because this story is about to show you what happens when 2 broken people accidentally find each other and discover that sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places. They fell into silence again, but it felt different now. Like they'd accidentally stumbled into intimacy without meaning to. 2 wounded people who'd found each other at 35,000 feet and discovered their scars matched in ways that mattered. Mia stirred in Traci's arms, making small, distressed sounds even in sleep. Automatically, Traci began running her fingers through her daughter's hair, the soothing gesture she'd performed 10,000 times since Mia was born. Edwin watched this with an expression that looked like longing and grief braided together. What was her name? Traci asked quietly. Your daughter. Charlotte. Charlie for short. Edwin's voice went soft. She had these dark curls that went everywhere, no matter what we did, and a laugh that sounded like music. She wanted to be a veterinarian who exclusively treated dragons because regular animals were too boring. The memory clearly hurt, but he smiled through it. She was extraordinary. funny and fierce and so unbelievably brave during treatments that made grown men cry. The nurses called her their warrior princess. She sounds perfect. She was human. She had tantrums about vegetables and once told her preschool teacher that Daddy was a robot who didn't have feelings. Edwin laughed softly, painfully. She wasn't entirely wrong. I worked too much, missed too many bedtimes, told myself I was building a future for us when really I was just hiding from the present. And then she got sick, and suddenly the future was measured in months instead of years, and all those missed bedtimes felt like crimes I could never atone for. You were there when it mattered, Traci said firmly. You were there at the end. I was there when I had no other choice. I wish I'd been there when I still had options. When showing up was a choice I made instead of a necessity forced upon me by circumstances. The self-recrimination in his voice was familiar. Traci heard it in her own head every time she wondered if she'd missed signs that her marriage was failing. If she could have done something differently, been someone different, kept her family intact. We can't change the past, she said quietly. We can only try to be better in the present. Is that what you're doing? Being better in the present? I'm trying. Some days it feels like surviving is all I can manage. Other days I think maybe I can build something new, something that doesn't carry all the weight of what broke me. She looked down at Mia, still sleeping. I'm doing it for her. She deserves a mother who's whole, not just a collection of functional pieces held together by spite and stubbornness. Spite and stubbornness are underrated, Edwin observed. They've gotten me through some of my darkest days. What do you do? Traci asked, realizing she'd never asked. For work, I mean. You said you travel a lot. I run a company, Warren Technologies. We develop medical devices, primarily for pediatric applications, diagnostic tools, monitoring systems, treatment technologies, things that make caring for sick children less traumatic. Traci's eyes widened. Warren Technologies? I've read your research papers. Your non-invasive glucose monitor for diabetic children. That's revolutionary work. It's necessary work, Edwin corrected quietly. When Charlie was sick, every needle stick felt like torture. I watched her cry through blood draws and IV placements, and I kept thinking there had to be a better way. After she died, I sold my previous company and started Warren Tech with one purpose: making pediatric medicine less painful. It doesn't bring her back, but it means other children suffer less. That has to matter. It matters tremendously. Traci studied him with new understanding. You turned your grief into purpose. I turned my grief into anything except sitting alone in her empty room waiting to die, Edwin said bluntly. Purpose sounds noble. Honestly, it was survival. Work was the only thing that made getting out of bed feel remotely possible. I understand that more than you know. Part 2. Final 2,500 words. The plane began its descent into Boston 30 minutes later. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers announcing their approach. Mia woke up, disoriented and cranky for a moment, then saw Edwin and her whole face brightened like sunrise. Mr. Trunks. She held up the elephant, triumphantly. I kept him safe the whole time. You did an excellent job, Edwin replied with complete seriousness. He told me you're the best guardian he's ever had. Can I keep him, Mia, sweetheart? Traci interjected gently. Mr. Trunks belongs to Edwin. We need to give him back. Mia's face crumpled, and Traci braced herself for another meltdown. But Edwin held up one hand. How about this? Mr. Trunks needs to stay with me because he's very important to me. But I have something else you might like. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small enamel pin shaped like a rocket ship. This is from my company. We give them to brave kids who do hard things. I think you qualify. He pinned it carefully to Mia's shirt. She looked down at it with wonder, touching it gently like it might disappear. I'm brave. The bravest, Edwin confirmed. Mia was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked the question that made both adults freeze. Are you going to go away now? The weight in those 6 words was devastating. The learned fear of a child who'd already been abandoned once, who'd already discovered that people leave and don't come back. Edwin glanced at Traci, asking silent permission for something. She didn't know what, but something in her chest told her to trust this moment. She nodded. I don't know, Edwin told Mia honestly. But I'll tell you what, if your mama says it's okay, maybe we could meet for hot chocolate sometime. Would you like that? Yes. Mia's enthusiasm was immediate and absolute. Mama, can we? Please, please, please. Traci should say no, Every self-preservation instinct screamed at her to thank Edwin politely, take her daughter, and disappear into their new Cambridge life without complications. She'd learned the hard way that people left, that relying on anyone except yourself was a recipe for devastation, that promises were just pretty words that evaporated under pressure. But something in Edwin's eyes stopped her. Not pity, not charity, just genuine warmth, and maybe, possibly, the same desperate loneliness she felt every single day. "If you're serious," she said carefully, "we'd like that." Edwin pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number? I'm in Boston fairly regularly for work. We could coordinate schedules." They exchanged information while Mia chattered about all the things she wanted to tell Edwin over hot chocolate. Her favorite color, which was purple, her stuffed dragon collection, the fact that she could almost count to 30 without help. The plane touched down smoothly. They collected their belongings and joined the slow shuffle toward the exit. As they stood in the aisle waiting, Mia suddenly wrapped her arms around Edwin's legs in an impulsive hug. "Thank you for being nice," she said, her voice muffled against his expensive suit pants. Edwin went completely still. For a heartbeat, Traci thought he might pull away. Then slowly, carefully, he placed one hand on top of Mia's head, the gesture achingly gentle. "Thank you for keeping Mr. Trunks safe," he said quietly. They parted ways in the terminal. Edwin headed toward ground transportation while Traci and Mia went to baggage claim where her sister Rachel was meeting them. But before he disappeared into the crowd, Edwin turned back. "Traci, I meant it. About the hot chocolate. I'll text you. I hope you do," she replied, surprised to find she actually meant it. Rachel found them 20 minutes later, sweeping Mia into a hug before studying Traci with the X-ray vision of someone who'd known her for 30 years. "You look different," Rachel observed as they loaded luggage into her car. "I'm exhausted." "No, not tired. Something else. Did something happen on the flight?" Traci thought about Edwin, about his kindness and his grief, and his daughter who'd loved elephants, about the way he'd seen Mia not as an inconvenience but as a small human deserving of patience and respect, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, not all men disappeared when things got hard. "Maybe," she said. "Ask me again in a few days." 3 days passed. Traci unpacked boxes in her new Cambridge apartment, enrolled Mia in a preschool 2 blocks away, started her new position at the Research Institute, built the framework of their new life piece by careful piece, and tried very hard not to check her phone every 20 minutes to see if Edwin had texted. He won't, she told herself firmly. It was airplane kindness, a moment of connection that felt significant at 35,000 feet, but would dissolve under the weight of real life and actual effort. Except on day 3, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Edwin from the flight. There's a great hot chocolate place in Harvard Square if you and Mia are interested. No pressure, just an offer." Traci stared at the message for a long time. She could ignore it, delete it, pretend the flight had been an isolated moment, beautiful but contained, requiring nothing from her except gratitude. She could protect herself and Mia from the risk of another person who might eventually leave, or she could be brave. The way she kept telling Mia to be brave. She typed back, "Saturday at 2. Mia has already asked about you 3 times. His response came within seconds. "Saturday at 2. I'll bring Mr. Trunks. He's been asking about her too." Something in Traci's chest, something that had been frozen solid for 4 months, cracked just slightly. That Saturday, she stood outside a cafe in Harvard Square, with Mia's hand clutched in hers, wondering if she was making a catastrophic mistake. She'd spent 4 months building walls. Was she really going to let a stranger with kind eyes and his own ocean of grief crack them open? Then Edwin appeared around the corner, Mr. Trunks tucked under one arm, and Mia shrieked with pure joy and ran to him. And Traci thought, yes, maybe. Possibly. She was willing to try. "Hi," Edwin said, smiling as Mia launched into an elaborate story about the dragon she'd drawn that morning. "Hi," Traci replied. They went inside, ordered hot chocolate, extra marshmallows for Mia, dark chocolate for Traci, something complicated with cinnamon for Edwin. They sat in a corner booth while Mia entertained them with stories about her stuffed animals, and Edwin listened like she was sharing state secrets. "You're really good with her," Traci said quietly while Mia was absorbed in her coloring page. "I had practice," Edwin replied, "and I miss it. Miss having someone small rely on me, trust me to show up and be steady. Showing up is harder than people think. It's the only thing that actually matters." They talked for 2 hours. about loss and survival, and whether moving forward meant leaving the past behind or learning to carry it differently, about building lives from rubble, about whether contentment was enough or if joy was still possible after devastation. Mia eventually fell asleep against Traci's side, exhausted from excitement, and Edwin draped his jacket over her without being asked. "Can we do this again?" he asked as they finally prepared to leave. Traci should be cautious, should protect her heart and her daughter's heart, should remember that people made promises and broke them. "Yes," she said, "we can do this again." Are you wondering if Edwin will actually keep showing up? Are you hoping broken people really can help each other heal? Drop a comment right now and tell me, would you have given him your number? Would you have taken that risk? I read every single comment. Over the following months, this became coffee while Mia was in preschool. Museum visits, where Edwin explained physics to a fascinated 3-year-old. Quiet dinners at Traci's apartment where Edwin cooked while she worked and they moved around each other with increasing ease. Phone calls that started as logistics and ended as real conversation. The slow, careful building of something neither wanted to name too soon. 6 months after that first flight, Edwin invited Traci to his downtown Boston apartment. She'd never been there before. Their time together had always been in neutral spaces or her place. But tonight, Mia was having a sleepover at Rachel's house, and Edwin had asked if Traci wanted to see where he lived. The apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, expensive, showing wealth but not warmth, except for one door at the end of the hallway that was closed. "Can I show you something?" Edwin asked, his voice carrying an edge of vulnerability she hadn't heard before. He led her to that closed door and opened it. The room took Traci's breath away. It was a memorial. Charlotte's artwork covered the walls. Her favorite books lined shelves built at child height. Photographs documented 4 years of life, vivid and precious and gone. Mr. Trunk sat on a small chair surrounded by other stuffed animals. "This is where I come when I need to remember," Edwin said quietly. "I moved to this apartment 3 years ago, and I recreated her room exactly as it was. Some people think it's morbid. My therapist calls it an active grief practice and says it's healthy as long as it doesn't consume my entire life." Traci walked slowly through the space, studying each photograph, each drawing. Charlotte had looked like Edwin. Same dark hair, same intelligent eyes. She was beautiful, Traci said. She was everything. Edwin's voice broke slightly. "I need you to understand something. She's part of me. Always will be. If this becomes something more than friendship, Charlotte comes with me, not as a ghost or a replacement, but as a piece of my history that shaped who I am. I wouldn't want it any other way," Traci replied honestly. "Mia's father erased himself from our lives like we never mattered. You honor Charlotte by keeping her present. That's not morbid. That's love." Edwin crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I didn't think I'd ever want this again. Someone to care about. Someone who could hurt me. After Charlotte died, I thought I was done with vulnerability, done with letting anyone close enough to devastate me. What changed? A 3-year-old on an airplane called me daddy, and something in my chest that had been frozen for 7 years cracked wide open." Traci felt tears burning her eyes. "Edwin, I'm not trying to replace her father. I know she has one, even if he's absent. But Traci, I'd like to be in her life, and yours, if you'll let me. If you're willing to take a chance on someone who's broken, but trying, someone who comes with heavy baggage and scheduled therapy appointments and a room dedicated to a daughter who's been gone for 7 years. I'm asking you to take a chance on someone who's broken but rebuilding," Traci countered. "Someone who has trust issues and abandonment trauma, and a 3-year-old who will ask you impossible questions. Someone who might push you away when she's scared because that feels safer than being left. That sounds like we're both terrible risks." "Absolutely terrible," Traci agreed. "Want to be terrible risks together?" Traci thought about the past 6 months, about Edwin showing up for every coffee date, every museum visit, every impromptu dinner, never once canceling, never once making her feel like an obligation, about the way Mia's face lit up whenever he appeared, about how her own heart, so carefully guarded, had started to trust again despite every reason not to. "Yes," she said, "let's be terrible risks together." Edwin's hands came up to frame her face, gentle and careful. "Can I kiss you?" "Please." The kiss was soft, tentative. Two people who'd survived devastation learning to be gentle with each other's wounds. When they pulled apart, Both had tears on their faces. 2 weeks later, Traci and Mia moved into Edwin's apartment. Not because of rushing or desperation, but because Mia had asked, with the blunt honesty that only children possess, if Edwin was going to be her daddy now. Edwin had looked at Traci with such naked hope and terror that she'd asked, "Do you want to be?" More than anything, he'd replied, "Before I tell you how this ends, I need you to understand something. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life, messy and complicated and beautiful. If you believe that broken people can build something whole, if you believe second chances are real when they're earned through consistent action, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're building a community here that believes in hard-won redemption and love that shows up even when it's difficult. The challenges didn't disappear just because they chose each other. Mia still asked about her biological father sometimes, and those questions hurt. Edwin's grief anniversaries were difficult, days when he needed space to remember and mourn. Traci had moments of panic when old wounds reopened, and she wanted to run before she could be left again. But they kept choosing each other. Edwin showed up for preschool events and doctor's appointments. Traci held Edwin through the hard days when missing Charlotte felt like drowning. Mia learned that families could look different than she'd imagined and that daddy was a title earned through presence, not biology. 1 year after that flight, they stood together in Charlotte's memorial room. It had evolved. Now it held both Charlotte's treasures and Mia's artwork. The past and present blended carefully, honoring what was lost while celebrating what was found. Mia sat on the floor, showing Mr. Trunks her newest dragon drawing. She was 4 now, growing so fast it terrified Traci sometimes. "Daddy," Mia called, not looking up from her coloring. "Can you help me with this dragon? I want to make the wings purple, but I don't know the right purple." Edwin's eyes filled with tears. Joy and grief and gratitude all braided together. He looked at Traci, who nodded, her own eyes wet. "I'd be honored," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He crossed the room and knelt beside Mia, and together they debated the merits of different purple shades with complete seriousness. Traci watched them, her heart so full it ached. This man who'd lost his daughter had found his way back to fatherhood through the most unexpected path. This child who'd been abandoned had found someone who chose to stay. This is what healing looks like, Traci thought. Not the absence of scars, but the presence of people willing to honor them while building something beautiful anyway. That night, after Mia was asleep, Edwin found Traci in the kitchen. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For taking a chance on me. For letting me be Mia's father. For believing I could be someone worth trusting even after I told you about all my broken pieces." "You did the same for me," Traci replied. "You saw me at my lowest moment on that plane, and you didn't turn away. You saw me as pain, and you didn't treat it like an inconvenience. You showed up, and you kept showing up, and you proved that not everyone leaves." "I'll never leave," Edwin promised. "Not you, not Mia, not ever. I believe you," Traci said. And saying those 3 words felt like the bravest thing she'd ever done. "Here's what I need you to understand. Edwin Warren didn't get on Flight 447 planning to become a father again. Traci Gordon didn't board that plane looking for love, but sometimes the best things in life happen when we're brave enough to accept help from unexpected places, when we're willing to let strangers see our wounds, when we choose vulnerability over self-protection. 3 years later, Edwin legally adopted Mia. The courtroom was small, just family and close friends. When the judge asked Mia if she wanted Edwin to be her father forever, she looked up at him with absolute certainty and said, "He already is. We're just making it official." Edwin cried. Traci cried. Even the judge got a little misty. That night, they celebrated with purple dragon cake, Mia's request. And later, when Mia was in bed, Edwin and Traci sat together in Charlotte's room, now fully integrated with Mia's things, and talked about how grief could transform into something that didn't destroy you. How loss could make you more capable of love, not less. How the worst moments of your life could become doorways to unexpected blessings if you were brave enough to walk through them. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that healing is possible and that your worst moment doesn't define your entire story, don't just watch and leave. Like this video right now, share it with someone who needs to believe that broken things can be beautiful. Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's Stories, because we're not just telling stories here. We're building a community of people who believe in second chances, hard-earned redemption, and the truth that love is a choice we make every single day. Drop a comment and tell me your story. What unexpected blessing came from your darkest moment? When did a stranger become family? How did you learn to trust again after betrayal? I read every single comment, and your story matters just as much as Traci and Edwin's. Because here's the truth they learned, and I want you to know. You are not too broken to be loved. Your past does not disqualify you from a beautiful future. And sometimes the person meant to heal you shows up in the most unexpected way, at exactly the moment you need them most, even if you don't realize it yet. Edwin and Traci's story started with turbulence at 35,000 feet and a crying child who needed comfort. It became a love story, a family story, a redemption story. Not because everything was easy, but because two broken people decided that healing together was better than surviving alone. What will your story become? That's up to you. But I hope you'll choose brave. I hope you'll choose to stay open, even when it's terrifying. I hope you'll let people see your wounds instead of just your armor. Because somewhere out there, someone needs exactly what only you can give. And you need exactly what only they can offer. You just have to be willing to take the risk. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing that stories matter, and that healing is possible, and that love, real love, is worth fighting for. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And remember, you're not alone in your journey. We're all broken. We're all rebuilding. And we're all worthy of love that stays. Until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep showing up. Keep choosing love over fear. Your story isn't over yet. The best chapters might still be ahead.